Hello and welcome back to the channel. In the previous video, we learned about how we can find the maximum value in array. In this video, we're going to learn how we can find the minimum or the lowest value in array. Now, if you watched my last video, this should be quite easy to understand. I really recommend you watch the previous video, but even if you didn't, that's still fine. So here I have an array which has 5 elements: 60, 45, 22, 8 and 9. I have the index numbers for those elements as well: 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. I have an iterator I, which is basically going to help in the iteration of the array, and I have a condition down there. This is not a condition for the iteration of the array, it is just a separate condition. All it's saying is if b of I is lesser than minimum, then the minimum is going to be set to b of I. What this means is that if I have a value which is the minimum value, and if I find a value in my array which is lesser than that, well, then this will be my new minimum value because it's lesser than the minimum. And so we're going to set this as our new minimum value. It's very simple. But when we start our program, we don't know what the value of min is. We don't know what's the lowest value in array. If we knew that, then we don't even need to run this program. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume that our first value is our minimum value. We're just going to set minimum to 60, which is just the first element of my array. Now, this might not be the lowest value in my array, but we're assuming it is so that we can compare the other values with this minimum value. Now, let's just start iterating our array. So the first value of my I is 0. So we'll check if b of 0 is lesser than min. Basically, if 60 is lesser than 60. This is false. So our minimum will continue to be 60. Next, our I will increment to 1, and now we'll check if b of 1, which is 45, is lesser than 60. This is true, so we're going to update our minimum to 45, because now this is the new minimum value. Now this doesn't mean that 45 is the lowest value of an array. All this means is that 45 is the lowest value or the minimum value for the first two elements of our array. Now our I will increment to 2. And then we're going to check if b of 2 is lesser than 45 or if 22 is lesser than 45. Since this is true, we're going to set minimum to 22. Basically, this means that 22 is the minimum value for the first 3 elements of our array. We'll increment I again to 3, and now we're checking if 8 is lesser than 22. Since 8 is lesser than 22, we're going to change minimum to 8. Basically, for the first 4 elements, the minimum value is 8. We're going to increment I again to 4, and since the condition is now false, 9 is not lesser than 8, our minimum is going to stay as 8. So you can see that this simple idea of checking if a value is lower than the current minimum value is going to help us in finding the lowest value in array. Now we're going to look at a different example. So in this new array, I just swapped the first and the fourth element. So now my first value is 8 and my fourth element is 60. So we're just going to set minimum to 8 because that's what we do. We set the minimum to the first element. Then we're going to start our iteration. So our I is initially 0. So we're just checking if b of 0 is lesser than minimum. Basically, if 8 is lesser than 8. This is false, so our minimum is going to continue to be 8. Our I is going to increment to 1. And now we'll check if 45, which is b of 1, is lesser than 8. This is false, so our minimum will again continue to be 8. Basically, 8 is the lowest or the minimum value in the first 2 elements. Our I is going to change to 2, and we're going to check if 22 is lesser than 8. This is also false, so our 8 is going to continue to be the minimum value for our first 3 elements now. Next, I will increment to 3, and now b of 3 is 60, so we're checking if 60 is lesser than 8. This is false, so our 8 will still be the minimum value. Our 8 is the lowest value for the first 4 elements. Now the last element is also not lesser than 8, so we'll find that our 8 is the lowest value in our array. Now we'll see how this works in a real program. So I made this program where I made an array called A, which has 5 elements. And here I added this loop which basically initializes the values of A. It asks a user to enter the value, and every value that the user enters is entered into the respective elements of my array. We learned this in our iteration video. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make the program, or we're going to write the program to find the minimum value. So the first step is we're going to initialize our variable called minimum, int min, and we're going to set this to the first element of our array, a at 0. And then we'll start our for loop. So we know that our iterator needs to start at 0, int I is equal to 0. Since the last index is 4, our condition is going to be I is lesser than equal to 4. And then we'll just increment I as usual, I plus plus. Right. So now we're going to check if our current value is lesser than our minimum value. If this is true, we're going to set that current value as our minimum value. So we're just going to check if our current value, which is just a of I, is lesser than our minimum value. If it is lesser, we're going to make it our new minimum value. And this should give us the minimum value in our array. And now I'll add a println statement to just print the minimum value. So let's just run this program. Once I run this program, it asks me to enter the value. So let me just enter 5 values: 2, 8, 1, 33, and 5. We know that the lowest value is 1. So when I click enter, it should show 1. And it does show that 1 is the lowest value in the array. So our program works really well. Now what we'll do is we'll run this one more time and we'll enter negative values now. -3, -4, -5, -100, and -35. Our lowest value is -100. So you should print that -100 is the minimum value. And when I click enter, it does print that the -100 is the lowest value. And that's how we can find the minimum value in an array. I hope this video was helpful. In the next video, we're going to learn about how we can find the sum of all the elements in an array. Thank you for watching.